Please take your seats. Well, thank you, and now it gives me a great pleasure to introduce Mrs. Leslie Bonci. She's the Director of Sports Medicine, Nutrition at the Department of Orthopedic Surgery and the Center of Sports Medicine at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. She's a registered dietitian with a master's degree in public health from the University of Pittsburgh, where she is now an adjunct assistant professor of nutrition. She's board-certified specialist in sports dietetics. Leslie works with clients on an individual basis for any nutrition-related concerns, including sports nutrition, weight management, digestive disorders, cardiovascular diseases, cancer, diabetes, and eating disorders. She serves as a nutritionist for the Pittsburgh Steelers, a position she has held for the past 17 years. The Pittsburgh Penguins, Pittsburgh Pirates, the Riverhounds, the University of Pittsburgh Athletic Department, Pittsburgh Ballet Theater, and the Women's National Basketball Association. You can see we're very lucky to get her here. She is a very busy lady. She also consults to local and national schools and universities, including the University of Texas, on topics of eating disorders and sports nutrition, and is a consultant to the NCAA. She's also a consulting nutritionist for the U.S. Olympic canoe and kayak team. She's a contributing author to the Sports Nutrition Manual of the American Dietetic Association. She's written chapters in primary care medicine and sports medicine text and served as a guest editor for the Clinics in Sports Medicine, Sports Nutrition Update 2007. Leslie also co-authored Total Fitness for Women and is the author of the American Dietetic Association Guide to Better Digestion and sits on the editorial board of the Journal of Athletic Training. She has a weekly segment, The Winning Plate, on the Pittsburgh CBS affiliate, on the morning show, and in Pittsburgh Today Live. Please join me in giving this very special friend to the Army War College a warm Army War College welcome.
It is always such an honor and privilege for me to be here, and because this has now been my week of craziness with football, thank God they're back, but that's a good and bad thing. And as we're talking about eating today, and one of the things that I always talk is eating for performance, and that isn't necessarily what's happening on the field of play. It is the field of life. And I use acronyms oftentimes when I'm talking to my audiences, and one of the acronyms is SHOP. So we're going to go shopping today, and not necessarily because we have a grocery cart, but because we're talking about safeguard health, optimized performance. It is critical for all of us. You've just heard Dr. Ornish talk about this from the health perspective, and how can you marry both of those things together to truly do the best that you can. In that very eloquent and much too long introduction, in addition to some of the teams that I work with, I also work with the rivals. So our Pirates, number one, is they're in the middle of the pack right now. Thank goodness. You know, we're not looking up. That's a good thing, although this losing streak just has to stop. I also work with the Brewers at the top, so that's a good thing. This is what I care about. In the past week, one college player, one NFL player down on the field, 2 high school players that have died. And that is related to what they are not doing. Now, you are not all in this room with pads on, but every single one of us needs to think about those things that we do in terms of our eating every single day that help us to be the best we can from a health perspective and also from a performance perspective. So, that being said, let's delve into this a little bit. I like to start with what we don't do correctly so we figure out how to fix it. And number one is this uploading of calories. What I mean by that is a lot of people start their day relatively small in terms of the eating because they don't have time. From my athlete's perspective, I'm too tired to chew. That is not a legitimate excuse. That does not work. Or I don't have an appetite in the morning, or whatever it is, and so then we overcompensate. And we may be having more of our calories late at night. Why is that a problem? When people complain about energy levels over the course of the day, how can you be energized appropriately if you don't have food? A 5-hour energy shot doesn't do it. Believe me, it doesn't. The other problem with that is that the distribution of calories from maintenance of muscle mass, and I'm not talking to you as athletes, I'm talking to you as a health professional right now to say that there's been a tremendous amount of research that for all of us, it is in our best interest to do what we need to do to maintain our muscle mass. That means more even distribution of calories can be quite helpful, so this uploading thing doesn't work. The second is the rush through meals. It is the drive-through eating thing that people do all the time. We have to multitask. They don't do this in other countries of the world. Oh, you sit down, you use utensils. That's a good thing. And when people are rushing through meals, what's the consequence? Sometimes we eat more than we should. Triglycerides might be up in response to that largesse of the meal. In addition to that, all the digestive issues that tend to happen when people are rushing through their eating. And even absorbing all the nutrients. When people rush through meals, what do? They grab, they gulp, they go. They're eating larger bits of food, they're consuming larger amounts of fluid, and we just don't do the digestion that we should. The third is not pre-planning. Now, I'm not suggesting that everybody walk out of here and say, I've got to have my meals planned for the next year. I'm going to do that. But when it's always on the cuff, on the fly. Oh, what am I going to do? In terms of eating, it gets a little hard, and primarily from the standpoint of protein consumption, which we'll talk about, only because it is quite easy for somebody to say, in my desk, in my purse, in my car, I can keep something to eat. Of course you can. You can keep pretzels, you can keep crackers. A pork chop? I don't think so. And that is the problem, especially when it comes to protein. How are you going to make sure that you're getting in enough over the course of the day? Some plan of action really makes sense. The fourth thing is going for the dollar value over the health value. I actually, as I was driving up this morning, got a call from a radio station. I said, not now, I'm driving, can't talk to you at the moment. A recent study saying that it costs hundreds of dollars more to eat well. I'm not going to argue that point about it costs more to eat well. Is it necessarily hundreds more? It depends upon what people do. Because we are hearing all these messages about, oh, I should do organic, I should do that. Every time you do those things, the price point goes up significantly. I do believe that it is possible to eat well for the health value without having to spend an arm and a leg, or in other words, staying within your salary cap. It is possible to do that, but you have to be a little bit creative. Not spending time in the kitchen. The other thing that people do, and this is very interesting from the standpoint of kids in particular, those of you with children. Kids that are involved in the aspect of food preparation in some way, shape, or form. That doesn't mean you give a 3-year-old a cleaver. But on the other hand, is getting kids involved in something means they will eat a more appropriate amount of food. When we don't do anything short of show up and put it in our mouths, we usually tend to overcompensate. So I am not suggesting that we all watch the Food Network every day or that we become the next Iron Chef, but I do think that there is something to this concept of a little bit more hands-on with eating. One of the things I do with my pit athletes, and I do it with my professional athletes, is we do Steel Chef. Everybody learns how to cook. So far, nobody has cut off a finger. That's a very good thing. The worst we had last year, one of my football players, some way, I'm not sure how, got his finger underneath the can opener as he was opening it. I really don't know how it is that that happened. But other than that, we've been pretty safe in this. And I get emails from their parents saying, thank you, you taught my child how to cook. It's a good thing. This whole hands-off eating is another one that many of us might say, I grab a bar, I grab a shake. Nobody is sitting down with a Luna bar and a knife and fork, right? You don't do that. So all of this hands-off eating actually has an impact on the satiety, and we do tend to eat more quickly as a result. And I think the other thing is this shortchanging bodies, because somebody might focus a particular way, right? I'm just going to think about the protein that I eat. Or some of my triathletes, I'm just going to think about the carbohydrate. Or somebody who's a heavy sweater, oh, no salt for me. None of that is in the best interest of the body. Or even somebody that says, you know, yes, it's warm outside, yes, it's humid, I know I should drink more fluid, but I don't want to have to deal with the consequences, which is voiding. All right, well, that's shortchanging your body, mentally as well as physically. And so I really think we need to readdress that and think about what's going to work for you. So as I talk to you this morning, my goal is that you walk out of this room with one thing that you're going to do differently. You don't have to multitask. It's not erase the slate and start all over again. One thing that you can do differently, because I am about sustainability. That's what I want to have happen. So even when I have my players and they have to listen to me and get tortured every single year, and they say, hey, Leslie, I remember that you said only eat that food if that color exists in nature. Teal is not a color of food. It is not. They remember that. Incidentally, this year also, because we have now 7 trophies in Pittsburgh, you may or may not know that, 6 Lombardi and 1 mirror ball. So when you see the Steelers take the field, you might see some very interesting moves. I'm telling you, we can samba around the opponent. It's going to be fascinating. Well, what happens if people actually do make changes? Why do it? What's the investment here? Energy, huge. How many of you in this room, show of hands, would say, I would like to have more energy consistently? Of course. Of course we do. And the solution to that isn't always, well, I'll sleep for 10 hours. The solution of that might be as simple as, I'm better about what I'm doing with my fluid intake during the day. I'm better about what I'm doing with my food because those are the things that provide energy. Case in point, if somebody says, well, I'll do that 5-hour energy shot because it says right on the label, it will give you 5 hours of energy. First of all, if it's going to give you 5 hours of energy, that means minimally, everybody, it's going to supply you with 300 to 400 calories. There are 4 calories in 5-hour energy. One step, you're done. You are not energized for 5 hours. There's no way that you can be. We really want to do it the right way. Secondly, healthier aging. We all want that. I'm a marathoner. I intend to be doing marathons until the day that I am no longer on this earth. That is what I want to do. Now, it might be with a walker, but it's going to be there. It doesn't matter. For every single one of us, we want to live well. We are in the process of moving my parents, both of whom still work full-time, my mother teaches full-time at Carnegie Mellon, into a different place to live. They're leaving their home and they're going to be in an apartment. And looking at this and trying to make this happen, and they are both quite vital, and I keep saying, you don't need my help. Do this packing yourself. You run up and down the stairs. It's good exercise for them, but I will help them do that. Third, it is about fuel to move. Fuel to move in the course of the day. Just the things we need to do day to day, let alone physical activity. It is the #1 reason that people don't have the motivation, enthusiasm to do what they want to do physically. They're not always fueled well. And that is a continuum. For instance, if somebody says, I'm going to exercise first thing in the morning, I will do that in the absence of fuel. That's the rate limiting step in the equation to push yourself to go further. If somebody says, I'm going to be doing some resistance training, and I don't understand why I'm doing this weight training and I'm not seeing any change in my physique. Well, maybe somebody didn't have any protein before they lifted weights and they just did it afterward. Doesn't work that way. It's both sides. So we really need to hit things right in terms of the timing. Also thinking about nutrition as truly the prescription for disease management and in some cases prevention. It depends upon what it is that people are trying to do. Those of you in this room that might say, well, I'm at high risk for osteoporosis because somebody in the family has osteoporosis or diabetes or hypertension or hyperlipidemia or all of those types of things. What do you do with eating? Instead of it being reactive, it's what can I do from a proactive standpoint to keep my body as healthy as it can be? I know that this is something that Dr. Ornish believes in very strongly, and I'm extending that spectrum beyond the area of cardiovascular disease to life in general. What types of things can we do? And the other thing about eating, it's something we can control, right? Nobody can eat for you. This is a choice that you make every single day. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not about perfect eating. There is no such thing. Nobody does that. It is about doing what is the best for the body. So when I message to my athletes, and particularly my high school and collegiate age population, and we always talk about their grades because that's important. That's #1, students first, athletes second. And I might say to them, what's your GPA? Oh, I'm doing really well. I got a 3.7, excellent. Got a 4.0, absolutely fabulous. But the eating GPA might be a 0, right? I want it to be better. I don't want it to necessarily be a 4, but I want it to be better. So let's talk about what that is. And when we look at an ideal eating plan, every one of you in this room might have a different view of what that is. I am a dietitian, meaning that my expertise is both in the area of nutrition as well as food. So we're going to bring this to a discussion about what is actually on our plate and how do you optimize what's going into the body. So, first of all, there is equal attention paid to the actual what is on your plate or in your bowl or glass, as well as the quantity of it. Every one of us in this room needs a different quantity of food. It just is that way. If I have a 90-pound gymnast with a 360-pound nose tackle, obviously there's going to be a significant difference in the amount of food. Now, honestly, I think the gymnast needs more, but what am I to say? This is just one of those things. We need to figure it out for ourselves. The second is eating habits. When you eat. Also, looking at the rate of eating. That's a critical component of what happens in terms of making sure that you are doing the best for your body, and the consistency. For instance, people might say, oh, Monday through Friday, I eat a certain way. I'm really, really good. And then the weekend, all hell breaks loose. All right, that's not a good thing for your body. It isn't. It's not good for your lipids. It's not great for your blood glucose. It's not great for your body's physique to do that. I would rather somebody say, I could be more consistent 7 days a week. Rather than this really, really good and really, really naughty, how about, a little bit of indulgence most days? More reasonable to do that. And the other is physical activity. Why? Because we're all trying to achieve energy balance. Energy balance is that what it is that you are eating is matched by what it is you're expending. That does not mean we're talking about Biggest Loser type of exercise program. It means the energy expenditure in day-to-day walking around plus whatever it is you do physically. So if somebody says, my intake is here and my expenditure is there, you're not in balance. Conversely, when I have people who are training very hard for physical activity events, their intake is here, or their exercise is here and their intake is there. You're not in balance. You have to keep your body in balance. It is critically important. This is not just about your energy levels, it's also about health for the body to do so. That's why dealing with a lot of people that have eating issues, which I will tell you, ladies and gentlemen, is not just in women. There are a lot of men who deal with those issues as well. You have to provide what is going to give your body the optimal chance to achieve. Nobody does well in life, in health, in physical performance if they're not in balance. And that just happens to be a fact. That's a nice message to give because it's more about what you're going to include. So, what are the most important components of diet? Pretty much everything here. Nothing is getting more importance than anything else. So in other words, if somebody says, my plate only has chicken, no, I don't think so. My plate only has tomatoes, nope, I don't think so. My plate only has a Pop-Tart, well, absolutely not. So when we're looking at what is going to be on that plate, it really is combinations of all these things, which is precisely what the new My Plate logo is suggesting that we do. Not once a day, everybody, as part of every single meal. Yes, you need protein, and we'll define how people might do that. Yes, you need fruit, vegetable. Yes, you need grain. And there's a lot of choices that are there, so when people vilify these items, oh, grains are bad, shouldn't eat them, shouldn't have any fat whatsoever. Nobody is going to exist healthfully on a diet without fat. It also makes foods incredibly unappealing. And the other is fluid. Now, we don't always think about that as a component of the plate, but it is, because every time you eat food, is there fluid in it? Yes. Pretty much every food has some liquid in it, so it's not just what might be in the glass. Your fluid could be in a bowl, like a bowl of gazpacho. That works very, very well, fluid and vegetable. That's 2 for 2. It's a good thing. So this is actually the new designation. Thank goodness the pyramid is gone. And I'll tell you why. Number one, nobody eats in the shape of a triangle. Number two, it was so abstract before with different colored lines and different varying proportions, and nobody knew what was going on, and what if you were colorblind? How would you even see what it is that those things were supposed to mean? This is more realistic for several reasons. Number one, notice, it is a plate. It's kind of that indication of, oh yes, we should eat off a plate, not just tearing open a wrapper. Number two, there is a fork here. This is not a spear, it is a fork. Number three, looking at the plate, it actually is not a trough, it is a plate. And then the other component of that, whether that's going to be the dairy because it is a glass of milk, or if people are looking for a dairy alternative using a soy milk or something along those lines, it gives the fluid to the plate. We really want to make sure, and that is not a tureen. So thinking about this, and I know this sounds fairly simplistic, but the visual logo of encouraging people to actually sit down to a plate, that's a step in the right direction. Secondly, when you look at the division of this plate, and what it allows for is basically 4 quadrants. And if we were really to space that out and look at it, 3 of those quadrants are actually carbohydrate, grains, fruits, vegetables. They're all in that category of energy promoting and energy producing foods for the body. Protein is the other component of the plate. And again, this is not depicting a dinner plate. This is breakfast, this is lunch, this is dinner. This is the way that a plate should look as part of every day. Now, the nice thing about this is you can swap those quadrants in and out. For instance, if somebody says, I don't eat anything with a face. All right, then you have an option for protein foods. Somebody might say, I'm doing soy food. Somebody might say that I'm going to do nuts or seeds or beans as a way of getting their protein needs met. Somebody might say, well, I don't have white bread or white rice, but I will do brown rice or quinoa or something else. All of those things can be components of the day. So it gives you the flexibility to customize that plate to what works for you. That's the way that it should be with eating. So thinking about that, because this is really what we're trying to get to, the idea of nutrient rich. Now, we don't eat nutrients, we eat foods. But depending upon what it is that you pick, you either have a diet that is chock full of the nutritional advantage or not so great. Let me bring you back to the Pop-Tart again. Now, somebody might argue this and say, all right, well, that is a grain and that is fruit. Well, no. You know, it is a grain with some sugar in it, which is the jelly. So if we are looking for some alternative to that to make it a little better, what could we do? Well, what if somebody said, it doesn't take any more time, I'll have a slice of whole grain bread. Maybe I will put some peanut butter on it. That's protein and some fat. Maybe I'll put a little bit of fruit spread on it. Literally, it's the same amount of time to do it, and you have upped the nutritional value and making it more representative of what that plate would look like. So when we look at those things that are nutrient-rich, reading this from top to bottom, on the top, people hear the word whole grain. Nobody knows what that means. So whole grain is not a whole grain Cocoa Puff. No, that is not what we are talking about. Whole grain because somebody says, I'm doing brown rice, I'm doing oats, I am doing barley, I am doing rye, I am doing corn, or I'm doing whole wheat. All those things are considered to be whole grain, but I would suggest to you, go 2 for 2. One shot, let's get it right. How about those things that have more fiber in it? Makes sense. That's why I'm not a big fan of a whole grain Cocoa Puff. I mean, that's not a source of fiber. It just isn't. Number 2 on this list, and number 3, vegetables, fruits. Now, I hear the argument all the time, no white foods. Mushrooms, white. At least on the inside they are. Cauliflower, white. Onions, white. There's nothing wrong with those foods. They all have health benefits. So just because they're not vibrantly colored doesn't mean that they cannot be used. But the fact of the matter is that when I'm suggesting these vibrantly colored fruits and vegetables, what I am not talking about is a Cheeto. All right, that's neon orange, but I don't think so. Or a Fruit Loop or a Skittle. Now, just thinking about this, seriously, if you think, oh, yeah, I know, but and then we'll say it's too difficult. What is difficult about opening frozen vegetables? And that would be nothing. There are so many easy things, from the vegetable steamers to even taking a little foray through the produce aisle. Oh, look, they already have the vegetables on the skewers for you for the grill. I'm telling you, it is easy to do this. There are already the onions and the peppers cut for a fajita. There's nothing much to do. Open up a jar of salsa. That's tomato, that's a vegetable. So a lot of the reasons that people say for why they can't do it, we can pretty much negate that with the ease of what's around. Next on this list, looking at dairy foods. Some of you may use them, some of you may not. There's a lot of argument in the industry right now about what constitutes a milk, because milk, truly by definition, is cow's milk or something made from milk. So now we have soy milk, all right, not really a milk, but it's all right. I mean, it's a nice alternative if somebody wants to use it. There is almond milk, not the same. Almond milk has 1 gram of protein per serving. Cow's milk and soy milk have 8. That's a very significant difference. If you're looking for a protein replacement, you're not going to get it in almond milk. Rice milk is about the same. There also is coconut milk. Well, some protein in it, but it also a little bit more fat. We've got all these things out there that people can use. Most importantly is you find something that works for you. What is not on that list of low-fat dairy is frozen yogurt, because it really isn't. It's primarily sugar and a tiny little bit of yogurt. So when I'm talking about yogurt, I'm talking about the yogurt in the dairy case. The Greek yogurts that are all over the marketplace right now, and it's a wonderful thing because they're very high in protein. Most of the Greek yogurts per serving, 22, 23 grams of protein. Regular yogurts, 8. That's a significant difference at basically the same calorie level. It's reverse. The Greek yogurts are much higher in protein relative to the sugar content. Regular yogurts are exactly the opposite. And the last component of what is nutrient rich is getting in protein foods. They are not created equally. So somebody might say, I'm choosing bacon. Bacon is really a fat. It really isn't considered to be a protein. However, if somebody says, I'm doing Canadian bacon, turkey bacon, okay, extremely lean. If somebody says, oh, but I heard that red meat was bad, depends upon what you're picking. Somebody says, I'm just going to pick pepperoni, yeah, pretty high fat content in it. If somebody says, I'm picking regular ground meat, pretty high fat content, but you can go into a grocery store and buy 7% fat. That means it's 93% lean, and there are some that are even a little bit lower fat. So when people say, I'm trying to eat healthfully, I'll just do chickens, I'll just do fish, and they're not smiling because everybody feels like they're going to swim or they're going to just cluck after that point. Don't need to do that. A lot of lean red meats. The other component of this is egg. Now, everybody has an opinion about whether or not they want to eat eggs. Again, I'm looking at optimizing protein intake because I think it is a critical component of the plate every single meal. I have people that say to me, I will throw the yolk away. Just realize, yes, it is a source of cholesterol. You're also throwing half the protein away when you do that. That is money down the disposal. One whole egg is 7 grams of protein. The white is only 3.5. So, if you like the egg, eat the egg. Eat the entire egg because you're also getting the vitamin D that is there as well as the vitamin A. Egg yolks are also a very significant source of lutein. What is that? It actually is a plant nutrient that's important for eye health. This year, when I went to go talk to the Pittsburgh Pirates in spring training, I always have to do something different because they hear me every year. And there's a fascinating article in one of my journals about disability glare. In our eyes, we have these inner sunglasses. And in baseball, it's a problem, right? You're looking up and hopefully catching the ball when it comes your way. And even if you have your Oakleys on, you're still squinting to a certain extent. Lutein, which gives egg yolks those beautiful yellow colors and also is in corn, and zeaxanthin, which is in deep green vegetables, both help to prevent that disability glare, and they do it very significantly. So this year, spring training, I cut a hard-boiled egg in half, put the yolks over my eyes. 2 egg yolks a day may keep the glare away. And in addition to that, we had beans and greens. 8 o'clock in the morning, you can only imagine, sitting there with the baseball team, 8 o'clock in the morning, they're drinking their Red Bulls. I'm showing them beans and greens, and Clint Hurdle, our new manager, gets up with a fork. And he says, Leslie, what is kale? I said, it's a deep green vegetable. And he takes the fork, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, please don't gag. Oh, please, don't spit it out. Oh, please be okay with it. He takes a spoonful. He said, this is great. We're going to have this on our training table every day. And we do. So when we're looking at the benefit of the deep green and doing the deep yellow, I'm telling you, this are those things that are nutrient rich. It's not just a neck down phenomenon. If we're all keeping our eyes healthier, that's pretty good for the body. When people are eating deep green food, that is terrific for your bone health. Critically important to do these things. When I have athletes that say to me, well, I don't eat anything green, but I take this greens powder, I don't think so. What is that? That is not a vegetable. Somebody's making a lot of money selling that product. No. If you really want the benefit of it, you do it with the food because the food is going to give you all the plant nutrients that are there. There's no way we can extract that and just put it into a pill form. Fish oil, different. But when we're looking at actual fruit and vegetable consumption, not in a pill form, actually eat the item. Makes more sense. All right, what about timing? Critically important. How you eat, when it is that you eat, as well as what it is that you eat. And when I say how you eat, that might sound fairly obvious what that is. But again, do you eat because you sit down? Do you eat because when you're in the kitchen with the phone in one hand, it's kind of the octopus effect, okay? I'm just grabbing with there. Let me tell you, the person on the other end of that phone is really not enjoying the chewing. They don't like that. Do you actually make yourself sit down with utensils to eat a meal? If you don't, think about it. Timing is critical, not only from the standpoint of sports performance. Anybody in this room who is dealing with blood glucose, one of the most important ways to control your blood glucose is the timing of your eating, not just the actual what is on your plate. If somebody says, I'm trying to do the best for my body to maintain my muscle, it's the timing of the protein intake over the day, not just the what you're getting in, not just the quantity, but how you divide it over the day. So when I'm looking at quantities, my philosophy in general is this: less is more. The only exception to the rule I might have for that is some of my hockey players, because they just can't keep their weight on. My Ironman triathletes, because they are expending a tremendous amount of calories every single day. But I think for the most part, most people do tend to overconsume. I do a weekly blog, or almost weekly, for Runner's World. And I have people that will email in and say, I can't understand it. I trained for my first marathon and I put on 20 pounds. How could that have happened? Well, because A, they're doing their run and then they're running to Starbucks and having a scone and a latte. All right, that's issue number one. Number two might be that, oh, well, I don't want to bonk. I don't want to hit the wall when I'm running. So, you know, it's like this little smorgasbord. Oh, let's have a gel, let's have a chomp, let's have a drink, let's do that. And so over the course of the time they're physically active, they've actually consumed more than they've expended. This is why it doesn't work to do that. Less is more, which also reflects the size of our plates, the size of our bowls, the size of our glasses, the size of our utensils. And quite frankly, this is also what the 2011 dietary guidelines are suggesting: right size. That doesn't mean downsize necessarily, it means the right size. And we've gotten so wrong about it overall, of just much too much in terms of the portions of food. So I think that one of the ways of accomplishing that is slow down. That is not a word in my vocabulary. Unfortunately, I'm trying, because the second cup of coffee just kicked in, so I'm really going to make an effort here to slow it down. Is thinking about this: how do you slow down your eating? Well, one of the best ways of doing that is sitting to eat. I mean, truly, you can't reach the food as quickly when you're sitting on a chair. Secondly, it's utensils. In other countries of the world, people devote 2.5 hours a day to eating. Isn't that nice? Here, it's the race for who can get done in under 5 minutes. That does not make your digestive system very, very happy. And even the idea of chewing, and there is some very new research again suggesting that benefit of chewing foods to increase the satiety for what it is that we are doing. So all these things together really make a difference in enabling us to enjoy more what it is that we're putting in, as well as digesting better what is going into our body. So from a fluid perspective, looking very specifically at things here, how much do we need? It has been a long, hot summer. We're not done. The humidity has been pretty high. Last week, I went to Montana. I thought, oh, this will be great. It'll be cooler. Wrong. In Helena, it was 90 degrees. Like, there for baseball. Then I had to go to Phoenix. I think it was 2,000 degrees there. Warm, warm, and warmer. And when you're inside, it's cool, it's very comfortable in this room. We're not always thinking about it, and then we go outside, and it gets warmer again. And this whole issue of fluid, not everybody's getting it right. Even new diets, like the 17-day diet, 64 ounces of liquid a day. But that's not really the number. That's an arbitrary number. So how much fluid do you all need to have per day? It is based upon gender. It is also based upon activity level. So for women, it is 11 cups, or basically about 90 ounces of fluid a day. 70 derived from what it is that you're drinking. The remaining 20 is coming from the foods that you eat. That's primarily fruits and vegetables. For men, it is 16 8-ounce cups of liquid a day, or basically 125 ounces, or the equivalent of about 100 ounces via liquid, and the 25 coming from fruits and vegetables. Think about what you are doing currently, right? That reference small styrofoam cup, if somebody has a cup of coffee, that's 8. How many do you drink over the day? Nobody gets extra points for over-consuming. That can be an incredibly dangerous thing for the body to do. But do you drink enough? Are you consistent? It is the number one reason that people actually experience fatigue when they're physically active. Number one. So that doesn't mean that you overconsume, but it means you have to consume right. This is also baseline levels, ladies and gentlemen. This does not even take into account the amount of liquid that somebody needs when they are physically active. And if people adopt an eating plan where they do this little lots kind of thing, you don't have enough liquid during the day, and then you're trying to make up for it at night, and then what happens? You're going to the bathroom all night long. That is not realistic. And so we also want to think about our fluids beyond the glass. That's not the only way we have them. When you eat an apple, it's 50% liquid. When you have a salad, you chew lettuce, it's very liquidy because it is. Somebody might have soup. Somebody might have Jell-O, even milk. All of those things are considered to be liquidy foods, and you do it gradually. So if I'm saying to you this amount, 11 to 16 cups of liquid a day, I make my athletes do this all the time. I torture them in ways that you can't even imagine. But one of the things that I think is really important, do a baseline. Just tabulate it tomorrow. How much fluid do you take in from the time you wake up until the time you go to bed? There's a baseline number. If somebody says, all right, I consume about 40 ounces of liquid a day and I need 90, all right, the goal tomorrow is not 90. The goal for the rest of the week is maybe you bring it up to 48, and it's probably going to take you a good 4 to 6 weeks to get up to that goal. We don't go from here to here and expect the body to say, that's great. It doesn't work that way. That's why people aren't successful when they're making the changes. Also, so when we look at this and thinking about these amounts, people get a lot of misinformation about fluid. For instance, I mentioned to you caffeine. You have a cup of coffee, you have tea, you have a Red Bull, Monster, Rockstar, any of those types of things. Yes, there's caffeine in it. Is that dehydrating to the body? It is not. The only thing that happens when you consume a caffeinated beverage is you might have to void a little faster, but you're not voiding more. That is a big myth. Well, if I drink a cup of coffee, I better follow that with a gallon of water. No need. No need to do that. It is part of the liquid. Now, if you said, well, I'm just going to have a 5-hour energy shot, well, that's only 1 ounce, so that's really not going to work well for hydrating your body, but caffeine counts. Milk counts, juice counts, sports drinks count, soda counts. The only fluid that does not count, alcohol. Oh, I had a 6-pack. No, that is not part of your fluid intake for the day. It just is not. And incidentally, just to say this, and because I have to be the mom as well as being the educator for a lot of the audiences I work with, is a hypothetical situation. I always tell my high school and collegiate athletes this. I don't encourage drinking in my high school athletes, believe me, but they do. Is, well, somebody had practice in the afternoon or they had a game, and whether it was a good one or a bad one, okay, we're just going to go out and have 1 beer when they're done. 1. If somebody has alcohol post-exercise in the absence of replacing the fluid that they've lost, they will now delay recovery minimally 24 hours. Depending upon the degree of dehydration that occurs during exercise, it can be a 72-hour recovery. That's 3 days. That is enormous. When we're looking at what happens in physical activity, water or sports drink, when you're active, there really aren't other things that work around the time of physical activity because the goal is to get the fluid out of your stomach quickly and into your muscles. That's the reason. Well, and I always say this, and I don't use bottled water, and really it makes me crazy, the whole environmental thing, but it's also very pricey. And to address this point when people say it costs a lot of money to eat healthy, you know what? Going out and buying bottled water is not inexpensive. It is a lot less expensive to say, I'll use something reusable, I'll use something stainless steel. Making our own coffee. My husband was talking about this the other day. He said, boy, I wish I thought of Starbucks. You made a fortune. People go in and spend all this money, and then you order, I want it extra hot, extra whipped, and the barista is saying, you're all getting the same thing anyways, but nonetheless, we smile happily and we take those things. If somebody says, I'm going to brew my own coffee or tea, you actually save a lot of money, and you're probably less likely at home to put all that syrup and all that other stuff in it, so it saves some calories as well. And from a health perspective, I do think there's something to be said for consuming calories by chewing, not necessarily drinking. A lot of the people I work with don't think about the fact that if they have a soda, or if they have fruit punch, or even the alcohol or energy drinks, that there's a calorie tag attached to that. When I have some of my athletes that will say, I don't understand why my weight isn't going down. It's like, well, they went out and they had 3 margaritas the size of a football helmet. All right, that might be part of the problem. There's a lot of calories within alcohol, and alcohol makes you hungrier. I don't think there's anybody in this room who could honestly say, I went out and I had a couple of beers and boy, I'm really craving some carrot sticks. No, you're not. No, you're not. The closest you're going to get to the vegetable is if you had a Bloody Mary, and that's the tomato juice, and you gnaw on the celery stalk. Otherwise, it doesn't happen. It can be a huge calorie load for the body to have it. So, looking at my plate second time around, protein. How much protein per day? I'm going to challenge some of the dietary guidelines that are out there right now. And again, I'm biased in my approach because of the audiences that I work with regularly. I want to keep you all with your lean mass. This is my goal today, that everybody maintains the mass that they have. I'm not making you into competitive bodybuilders. I'm not going to have you out there on the gridiron. I want your bones and I want your muscles to be healthy. So how much protein do you need to have per day? Minimally, ladies and gentlemen, half your body weight. The number of grams of protein that you require per day. That is more than what the dietary guidelines suggest, which is basically about 0.36 grams. Now, having said that, does that mean you have to sit down to a cow? No, you do not. Because quite frankly, when you have meat in any way, shape, or form, if you consume any dairy foods, if you have vegetables and grains, all those foods contain protein. The only thing that is not a source of protein is fruit and oils. Everything else does. So it doesn't always mean that we have to have a greater percentage of the plate being allocated to the protein foods. At an absolute upper limit, it is 1 gram of protein per pound per day. Absolute upper limit. That is not a number that I would encourage unless I have somebody who is quite debilitated, needing to put the mass back on. For people that are trying to lose weight, we usually bring the protein up higher to preserve the lean mass, or for a young person who's trying to increase their lean mass. Maximum 1. I had one of my baseball players who said, he was consuming like 2 grams of protein per pound body weight, and he weighed 200 pounds. Literally, he was taking in 400 grams of protein a day. And his major complaint was he was constipated. Well, no wonder, for heaven's sakes, nothing was moving anywhere, all that meat sitting in there. So I asked him where he got that information. He said, Muscle and Fitness magazine. When we looked at the magazine, what the magazine said was 2 grams per kilo, not 2 per pound. That was the reason. We fixed that problem. He smiled. Everything was good. So this is really a very, very critical thing, having enough but not necessarily too much. And why? Because a lot of people do think, well, the more protein I take in, the more I will be able to see a development of lean mass. Nope. If you take in excess of what you need, you will see an increase in body fat. Just is that way. So at an absolute minimum, it's 60 to 70 grams a day. And there are actually some studies suggesting for people over the age of 60, it might be 100 grams a day. That's not typically the pattern we see. We usually see protein intake dissipating as people get older. And remember, lots of different ways we can get that in. So what are the sources? Look at these items ounce for ounce equivalent. If somebody said, I have a blackberry-sized amount of fish or poultry or meat, it's all the same, all about 21 grams of protein. An egg is 7. A veggie burger made from soy is about 18. A glass of milk is 8 at a minimum. It's an 8-ounce glass. The Greek yogurt, 23. Gets pretty easy to get those needs met over the course of the day. But ideally, everybody, it's more even distribution. So, hypothetical. If somebody figured out maybe they need about 90 grams of protein a day, what would be the most ideal way? 30, 30, 30. That kind of a division for the protein instead of just little lots. So that means for a lot of people, they're increasing the size of their morning meal and doing some decreasing of the amount of what might be there the rest of the day. We also get protein in dried beans, thinking about kidney beans, lentils, garbanzo, black beans, all those types of things, peas the same, and nuts and seeds. So lots of different ways that you can get your protein needs met. So what might be some portable things? Because I mentioned to you earlier, it's not like you can keep a pork chop around with you all day long. That's a food safety nightmare. I really like the idea of using the roasted soybeans. It's basically a fresh edamame cooked. Why? Because it's an excellent source of protein. A quarter of a cup, tiny amount, has about 25 grams. Oh, easy. They don't require refrigeration. You can buy the honey roasted one. The wasabi ones are great, but they definitely have a kick to them. That will wake you up and give you energy. But the fact of the matter is it's a very simple thing. Even the packets of tuna or chicken or salmon. I always encourage the parents of my college athletes, send your kid to school with a ton of those. For my minor league ball players who certainly don't command the salary that the major league guys do, that's a relatively easy and inexpensive way for them to supplement the protein. They can put that tuna into their mac and cheese, makes it better. They can put that packet of chicken into their ramen noodles, makes it better. It's not an enormous price point, but it increases the nutritional value. Beef or turkey jerky or even salmon jerky. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, they do make soy jerky. I can't even describe to you what that tastes like. Imagine an eraser with a little bit of flavor. Not very nice. Turkey pepperoni is a great one because it is extremely lean and it has some flavor to it and it's not greasy like regular pepperoni. Even hard-boiled eggs out there as a terrific portable protein foods. The packets of whey protein, and they are available. I really like the ones that are unflavored because it becomes quite versatile. You could add them into peanut butter. I had an athlete yesterday who said she puts hers into grits to give her a little bit more protein. You can mix them into a juice. It's very, very simple to do that as a way of getting more protein into the diet. And the last is TVP, which is texturized vegetable protein. If anybody in this room has ever eaten Hamburger Helper, you've eaten TVP. It's soy. It's basically defatted soy. So the protein content is quite high. By itself, it tastes like nothing, but it mixes very easily. Vegetarian chili makes up in about 5 minutes. Very simple thing to do. Excellent, excellent source of protein and low price point too. So what about carbohydrates and my plate? What are we looking at here? I think there's something to be said for being selective. All the diet plans that are out there talk about this, decreasing the refined grains. Well, what does that mean? It's not just that you never eat Italian bread again, or sourdough bread, or never have white rice. It's more the other types of things. Is somebody eating their carbohydrates because they're coming from gummy bears? Is somebody eating their carbohydrate because it's coming from that poor malign Pop-Tart? Where are the sources? Could you potentially swap that out a little bit? Could you maybe pick a wrap that has more fiber? Or even a cereal that might have more fiber? I have a lot of people that say to me, oh, granola. Yeah, that's great, that's healthy. It also packs a pretty hefty calorie punch. And not all granolas are high in fiber. But if we're looking for something comparable, Fiber One, even the Special K granolas, Brand Buds, all brand, they all provide that crunch. It's an easy thing to add the yogurt, but the fiber content is significantly higher. A little swap out to maximize the health benefit. I am not a fan of this low-carb stuff. Yeah, we have royalty that have done that and are now emaciated. I mean, really not a good thing. When people are just doing so much protein to the exclusion of all else, it really affects your energy level. So we can be selective, but we're not taking those things off the plate. Keep in mind that a significant component of the carbohydrate you eat is fruit and vegetable, because that also provides fluid, so it is dual duty for your body. How much fiber also, that's what you get from carbohydrate food. The range is 21 to 38 grams a day. For women under the age of 50, it's 25 grams of fiber a day. For men under the age of 50, it's 38 grams of fiber a day. That is a lot. If somebody says, I'm not eating any fruits and vegetables, you're going to be very hard-pressed to get your fiber needs met over the course of the day. Over the age of 50, it's 21 to 30 grams of fiber a day. Not tiny amount. These are the foods that provide it to the body. And so looking at the items that are here, a lot of choices. Not necessarily good or bad, it depends upon your goals. For instance, if I have somebody that says to me, Leslie, I'm trying to put some weight on, I might have them swap from a bread to a bagel because a bagel is more dense. How much more dense? Most bagels out there are the equivalent to at least 4 slices of bread, some a little bit more than that, depending upon the size. Even people go to the ballpark and they watch these sporting events and they're sitting there eating. Pittsburgh PNC Park is lovely and they have the all-you-can-eat seats. Now let me tell you something. When people sit in those seats, they are not running around the bases. They are not behind the home plate catching, they're not throwing, they're not doing any of that thing, they're eating. Oh, I'll eat a soft pretzel because look at this, it doesn't have any fat in it. A soft pretzel is the equivalent of 6 slices of bread. That's what they are, and that's without anything on it. So that's why I think we want to be somewhat selective about what it is that we choose. If you're going to have pasta rice, yes, you can pick whole grain, but you don't have to do that all the time. Not everybody likes brown rice. Not everybody likes whole wheat pasta. My husband's family, Italian. No whole wheat pasta. They just don't do that. And they're really quite healthy. And we've been to Italy several times to visit them. Cereals, yes. Whole grain preferable, real colors. Now, if you think about something like Fruity Pebbles, and you pour the milk in the bowl, and when you're done, it's gray. That's a little disturbing, all right? Really looking for things that might have a little bit more benefit to them. And the other thing about carbs is in this country, what we do, we snack, cracker pretzel. Nobody in this room says, oh, I'll eat 1 pretzel nugget. No, you don't. It's a bag. Well, I'll just eat 1 cracker. No, you don't. So that's why I think there's other carbohydrate items it's easier to be careful about the amount. That's why people get into trouble. Not because it's on their plate, but the amount of it is just a little bit much. Oh, look, I had a trough of fettuccine Alfredo. All right, that's the problem. It was more about the quantity of it than anything else, and realizing that beverages and sweets are also our carbs. So what could be those portable carbohydrates? Oatmeal is a great food, everybody. From the lipid standpoint, it works very well. From blood glucose management, it works very well. Even for people who tend to have nervous stomachs, it works very well because it takes longer to leave the digestive tract. That's a good thing. What about kashi bars or something like that? It's a whole grain, higher fiber bar. Dried fruit, another one. Excellent because it's portable. You can't keep a bunch of grapes around for an extended period of time. They mold. But on the other hand, raisin, apricot, dried plums, formerly known as prunes, tart cherries, all those types of things, they work well. Looking at dried vegetables, that's another option, or even portable vegetables, baby carrot, things along those lines. Looking at crackers that might be higher in fiber, even popcorn, that's a whole grain, it's corn, it worked. And I love the idea of things like vegetable or tomato juice, not only because it's the red color, but some very recent research suggesting that tomato-based products do have a role to play in bone health. Those of you who don't use dairy for whatever reason, don't tolerate it, don't like it, here's another way of helping to fortify your bones. And then what about fat? The other one that people will say, well, I shouldn't. You need it. First of all, it adds flavor to food. Does. Any of you who have eaten things that used to have fat in them and don't anymore, you know you're eating something different when you have it. If you close your eyes and eat a rice cake or a styrofoam cup, it is the same thing. Exactly the same thing. If you say, I pick reduced fat peanut butter, it has this strange little crunchy thing in there. I don't know what that is, but it makes me nervous. Or what about fat-free fat? What is that? I don't know. Let me take this stuff and spray it on my salad. It's like deodorant on lettuce. It's just weird. Don't do that. Fats are really very healthy to have. Yes, some olive oil. My last name ends in a vowel. We use olive oil in our house every single day. Yes, olives. Even something like avocado. That does not mean a trough of guacamole with chips, but it means that there is the benefit to including those things better for your body than saying I won't. The only time, ladies and gentlemen, that I would have anybody restrict their fat intake is if they had pancreatitis, if they had some fat malabsorption that warranted that. Even when people say, well, if I cut my fat intake to an absolute minimum, I'll burn more body fat. No, you won't, because usually you get hungrier sooner and you're going to end up over-consuming of something else. And anybody in this room who was old enough to remember the craze of all those fat-free foods, like Snackwell's cookies, it's like eating chocolate-covered air. People were eating the green box looking for the satiety because they weren't getting it with what was in the package. Or, Entenmann's fat-free coffee cake. Isn't the serving the whole thing? No, it isn't. That's the problem with those types of things. It just doesn't work well, not necessary. So what are the things that have fat? Basically, everything on this list are fine with the exception of maybe the bacon and sausage a little bit less. Why? Because those are saturated fats. It doesn't mean none, it means less of and more of the other types of things. This whole area of fat debate right now, getting away from the concept of fat is bad to being selective about it, but making sure that you include it. And I will tell you, anybody in this room who has a goal of wanting to keep your weight in check, when you add some fat regularly, you will feel fuller for longer. you will enjoy more what you're eating, and you will eat a more appropriate amount of food. That's a very nice message to give. The Mediterranean diet is not a loaf of bread and a plate of olive oil. That is not what it is. But it is about cooking with fat and using fat-containing food as part of the plate every single meal. So what are the portable fats? Nuts are, seeds are, nut butter is easy, easy, easy to do these types of things. If you're worried about a portion, you can buy a big thing of nuts from Costco and you can portion it out in small amounts. That works. The serving size is not a 5-pound jar. The serving size is not a ladle of peanut butter either. So how do we do this? And thinking this whole idea of nutrient rich, what do? If you go to the grocery store, what should you do? What does your cart look like? I would love it if somebody invented a grocery cart that literally when you put the Pop-Tart in, it just sprang right out. It would be like handed camera. Nope, sorry, not going in there. So in your cart, is there something for the produce aisle? There should be every time you're in the grocery store. What are your meat choices? What are your grains? What are your dairy foods? Could that potentially alter a little bit? Ladies and gentlemen, I don't want you to spend a fortune on what you're doing. Do you have to buy just organic? No, you don't. Do you have to buy just natural? Well, don't look for that word on meats because it really doesn't mean anything. If you don't want the antibiotics, make sure that the product says that. If you don't want the hormones in the milk, make sure that the product says that it doesn't. I will tell you in Pennsylvania, most of the dairy farmers don't put it in anymore. They just don't. And if anybody in this room thinks that organic is more nutritious, it is not. Nutritionally, it's the same. Price point, it can be different. If you're buying something organic because you truly want to, don't stop. But don't do it because you think it is providing more nutritional advantage to you, because that simply is not true and the science doesn't support that either. So how might we do this idea of maybe nutrient rich? How about something like a potato with some chopped tomatoes, kidney beans on it, low-fat plain yogurt? That is not an expensive item, and that is a very, very quick prep. What about a rice bowl? I demo this with my athletes all the time because it's easy. Brown rice, layer of salad, maybe some chicken or shrimp or tofu, and then maybe some pineapple on the top. A 5-minute prep to do something like that, nutrient rich in the bowl. Even looking at a scrambled egg burrito. Are eggs limited to the morning meal? Heck no. Could that be a dinner meal? Absolutely. And when the weather is so hot and horrible, the idea of turning on the stove and cooking something is not always appealing. An egg is a very, very quick item to do. Even some beans in there. You know, quite frankly, we do our own of these things instead of going to Chipotle. Oh, look at this. I got a burrito that's the size of a torpedo. You don't need to do that. You can do your own, and it actually works far better that way. The other thing is thinking about the thermic effect of feeding. One of the things that happens when we eat is if we only eat once a day, we only burn calories once a day. People who tend to eat more times a day, not 6 necessarily, but even 3, that's 3 opportunities for your body to digest. Protein foods, little bit more calories expended. Fiber, little bit more calories expended. So if we swap this plate a little bit and be selective on what's on our plate, at the end of the day, we're becoming more efficient. That's what we want to have happen. That's really what a lot of these diets talk about. 17-day diet, there's nothing to this calorie confusion. The body doesn't do that, but if we want the body to work harder, there are ways to make sure that that happens. So this whole idea of activating your plate, so to speak, making your calories count. How do you do that? And I am not just saying this with a topic of weight control. I am talking in general of making sure that we're getting the most out of what we're eating. The composition of the plate. The number of times you eat. Literally, your metabolic rate is the same if you eat 3 times a day or 6. I honestly don't think it's convenient for most people to eat 6 times a day. There's too many things that interfere with that. That's also an American phenomenon. Other countries of the world don't do that. If we say, well, I'm going to exercise, then you know what? You're splitting one of those meals. You exercise in the morning, you're doing part of your breakfast before, part after. That's still one meal. You just split it in half. You're doing lunch, you're doing dinner, and then maybe you have one floating snack during the day. We think about also slowing down and adding heat to foods. That doesn't mean you turn up the fire underneath. What goes in your food? You use spicy? Do it. That increases the fat burning potential. Green tea is another one that does that. Ginger, wasabi, all those types of things work extremely well. So I think that oftentimes when people have this goal in mind, the number of times you eat, the quantity of what you eat, where the calories come from, it's that little sneaky stuff that makes the difference. If you change one of these things, you will be successful. Yeah, I've done this for a long, long time, and I do think it's a far better message to be able to give. And so this is what I would consider the Wayne plate to be. Well, let me explain the colors to you. The red is the protein, more than a third of the plate. The green is the fruit and vegetable, bringing that up to more than a third of the plate. And then the grain component of the plate, the pasta or the rice or the tortilla or whatever it is about 1/4 of the plate. It's a slight decrease downward. It's not off the plate, it's a little bit less, okay? I'll use a slightly smaller wrap. Or instead of going to Chipotle and having the rice and the tortilla, I'll do either or. That's the way you make a Wayne plate. Not that difficult, and far more appealing than, oh, look, it's another grilled chicken salad with deodorant on top of it. See, you don't have to do that. We make it much more appealing with eating. The other thing is sense surround. Think about this. Your eating should provide enjoyment to you. If you were blindfolded, how would you assess your enjoyment of food? It would have a smell and a taste. It should. It should have a texture. That's why not everybody likes squishy foods. Yogurt is squishy. You put the granola in, there's the crunch. You add different spicy, sweet. It's what we like. Most of us are not just sitting at the sugar bowl and saying, yum. M&M pretzels, oh my God. Salty, crunchy, sweet, creamy. All those taste sensations are there together. This is what we like with eating. This is what eating should be. If you've kind of gone the route of bland, food is not going to be enjoyable to you. If you season it up a little bit, if you turn up the heat in terms of the temperature, you will enjoy far more what you're doing, and it's more exciting, and it lasts you for longer. And last thing, the issue of the sodium. A lot of argument about this right now of what it should or should not be. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm biased because I work primarily with active people who sweat. And when they sweat, they are not just losing fluid from their body, they are losing sodium as well. And so I do think that the more active one is, the more lenient somebody might need to be with their salt intake. That does not mean sitting down to a bag of nachos. It might mean, however, that somebody is using some sea salt, or perhaps seasoning with a little bouillon or something to make sure the needs are met. For people who are physically active, some lose up to 8,000 to 10,000 milligrams of sodium a day. If the dietary guidelines say 15 to 2,300, that is not in the best interest. You have to be your own best gauge about whether or not you might be a salt loser or salty sweater. And then, lastly, anti-inflammatory food. This is a big issue for me. I spend a lot of time with people in various states of pain, or they're inflicting pain on somebody else. So nonetheless, thinking about this. Tart cherries, tart cherry juice, excellent, excellent, excellent anti-inflammatories. You can find tart cherry juice at Costco as a concentrate. It's far less pricey than buying a bottle of the juice. Not, oh, I'll walk into the grocery store right now and buy fresh cherries. Not sweet cherries, it's tart. They're not sold in the produce aisle to eat them. You buy it as a juice or you buy them dried. Ginger. There's a lot of research on the benefit of ginger to help to prevent delayed onset muscle soreness. For those of you who say, I'm going to get out there and be more physically active, and oh, I can't walk the next day. That is the benefit of ginger. Not ginger ale, not a ginger snap. It's actually ginger itself that has that benefit. Capsaicin, that is what red pepper is. And some people buy it and use it as a cream. Actually, using capsaicin on the food internally, it can be an anti-inflammatory. Yes, the fish oil does have that impact of being anti-inflammatory, and most of us in this room are not going to eat salmon every day. It's incredibly pricey to do so. But the fish oil does confer that benefit to the body. Pycnogenol is actually pine bark extract, and that also has an anti-inflammatory effect, especially for people who have osteoarthritis. And green tea, not only a beverage, it might have a slight thermogenic effect for fat burning, also anti-inflammatory. Easy to incorporate these things. Well, I'll have my green tea, I'll add a little bit of ginger, tart cherry juice. Yeah, that's 3 for 3. And I'll take it with a fish oil capsule. That's 4 for 4. Very easy to do these types of things. So I do think, and I always say this and have fun about it, that eating really is, it is one of the variables in our life that we control. It is the thing you have the choice about. It should be something that you walk out of here and say, I can be sustainable. We're not talking about black and white. We're talking about that middle area. How can I customize it to make it my own? Because when you do that, at the end of the day, the impact on your energy, the impact on your health, the impact on your performance, whether it is in the work setting, whether it is the playing field, whether it is academic, it is always going to be in the right direction. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very, very much for having me here. Thank you. Yeah? Anybody? Any questions at all?
Good morning. I'm just curious, you mentioned frozen vegetables as an easy way to get some of those vegetables there. What nutritional difference is there, if any, between frozen versus fresh vegetables?
Actually, it is very, very minimal because the companies that are the major manufacturers of the frozen vegetables, what they do is those vegetables are picked as soon as they are ripe and flash frozen. When you walk into a grocery store, how long has that tomato been sitting in the produce aisle? Do you know? I don't, unless I saw them take it out of the carton, and even then, how long was it on the truck? So you're not sacrificing anything in terms of the nutritional value when you buy them frozen. The only difference would be if you buy them in a sauce. I'm a big advocate, if you're going to buy a frozen vegetable, buy it without anything in it, and then you can add what you want to it. But it does provide that convenience factor. Easy to throw frozen vegetables into a spaghetti sauce, into a soup, into a stew, no effort. Very simple thing to do. Anybody else? Any questions?
Being in the athletic realm, what's your position on dietary or athletic supplements, meaning a lot of athletes that take whey protein and nitric acid and B12s? Is there a real value added, and how much is too much?
Okay, first of all, from a dietary supplement perspective, and because I work with all of these governing bodies for sports, there are a lot of things that athletes cannot take because they are considered to be banned substances. That's number one. Number two, I am not an anti-supplement person. I'm a pro-athlete person in the sense that I would never, ever encourage somebody to use something that could be at all ergolytic or performance detracting or harmful to them. And supplements are considered that. They're not a replacement for food, it is a supplement. So from the protein perspective, if I have an athlete that says, I'm really having trouble getting my protein needs met each and every day, I do think that there might be a place for using protein. In what form? A protein isolate. In other words, the only thing that somebody is consuming is something that contains nothing other than protein itself. It could be a whey protein isolate, or it could be a soy protein isolate. Those are really the most effective ones that are out there on the marketplace. So when I have somebody that says to me, oh, I take heavy weight gainer, you pay a lot of money for that, for all this other stuff that is added. The second thing about protein, as I mentioned earlier, how do you use it appropriately? People take protein usually because they're trying to put on mass. What do the studies suggest? 12 to 20 grams before you lift, 12 to 20 after. Hey, my amplified whey has 60 grams of protein. I didn't take any before, I took 60 after. You know what that gives you? Very expensive urine. That's money down the drain. No reason to do it that way. From a B12 perspective, if I have somebody who is vegan, animal foods are the source of vitamin B12. Not everybody consumes brewer's yeast. Not everybody consumes B12 fortified soy foods. So that would be an indication for some individuals that would need to bring their B12 up, although it doesn't have a direct impact in terms of performance. There are so many things that are out there. I think the anti-inflammatory has potential because, when you compete in sports, there's some hurt involved in it. There just is the ache and pain that goes along with it. But a lot of things that are out there right now are a little dicey. The one new one that's making its way out there with some legitimate research, although the number of studies are fairly small, is beta-alanine. That is an amino acid. There have been some studies suggesting it might increase strength and power and might also help endurance athletes in delaying fatigue. The downside of it is that when people take it in too large a quantity, and this is precisely to address the point about how much, too large a quantity, meaning more than 10 milligrams a day, which is a relatively small amount by most people's standard, it can actually cause numbness in the arms and legs, numbness and tingling. So if I have a 20-year-old ball player who says, I'm taking beta-alanine, I'm having this numbness in arms and legs, I think I'm having a stroke, that's a little bit scary. So, although some things seem fairly innocuous, depending upon the individual, pre-existing medication, pre-existing health concern, they need to be careful. I like people to be very selective shoppers when it comes to supplements. ConsumerLab.com is a terrific website. Very, very credible information, independent testing, so it's not company-driven, to figure out what does and does not work. So if you're going to do supplement things, be a very, very informed shopper when you buy them. As much attention as you would put to buying a car, a laptop, a Kindle, or whatever, same thing when you're buying your supplements. Again, everybody, thank you very, very much for having me here.
Well, Leslie, on behalf of the Academic Year 12 class and the War College staff and faculty, we would like to thank you with a small token of our appreciation for you taking time from your busy schedule to support us in our program. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. If you could be back in your seats at 5 till for the next presentation. Thank you.